If you don't know who Dr. Nic is, well, be prepared to learn and find out. He's Australian, he is actually a doctor, and he's been doing Ruby and Cloud Foundry stuff for a very long time. So,
thanks, mate.
Enjoy.
You're a champ. Thanks, Carter. So a couple of things. So I made, on the mailing list, I did say if there wasn't room for anyone, I would have to visit their office. And I know, I've been to meetups before, there's something broken in the meetup.com system where they have this artificial concept of a waiting list. This is pretty impressive because I've been to meetups where a third of the people come. I've been to where a tenth we had, can be, so this is good. I actually call this a win. 90% of 100 is pretty freaking good. So thank you very much for coming. Because this is really exciting to talk about because this is some stuff that I've been building to solve a problem that I saw for myself. And often if I have a problem and it's not something my wife's told me about, that means it's probably a problem you've got. So it's cool to build tools to make it better. And I've been sort of a big fan of both Heroku and Cloud Foundry for a long time. So I want to was really excited to be able to contribute to this stuff. So there's a higher order theme. And I'll personally, thanks to LinkedIn for both the venue, Conrad, and for putting on the food. That's really awesome. And thanks to my wife for already feeding me tonight, such that I didn't eat any of it. So it looks really good. And so the higher order theme of everything I sort of think about. I think in creating my new company, there's this idea that everyone deserves nice things, which sounds very high-minded and correct, but there's a large group of underprivileged people in the world. They have professions, they call themselves software developers, engineers, product managers. They look and smell a lot like you, but they work in large enterprises. And these underprivileged people, they also deserve nice things. And so because we've all been at the front end, we've all picked up Ruby early, we've picked up Heroku and EngineYard and places like things like that. And there's still people out there, building products, using waterfall. They can't use Agile. They might have heard about Agile. They might have made the career mistake of actually trying to do Agile whilst not having any tools with which to help them. I mean, can you imagine attempting to do waterfall without, Agile without Pivotal Tracker, without Heroku or Cloud Foundry, without anything without continuous integration? These things, continuous deployment, this stuff enables better process. So I think it's really important. There's something inside me that thinks this is really important. And actually, I actually can explain why I think it's important. Because I can imagine the future. There was about 7 years ago, I had this idea popped in my head that I'm going to do this profession for another 40 years. So I guess I'm 33 years to go, and I kind of imagine that I'm going to spend half of that inside larger companies. Accidentally, you don't mean to. You just realize, shit, this got large, and so I kind of need to solve the problem of living inside a large company before I get inside it. Ironically, having said that, I do work in a consultant fashion for a large company. Fortunately, they use Cloud Foundry, so it's kind of nice to experience that and try to help with that process. But I want to make sure that I'm building tools and building a better way of life for future me, who I'm very empathetic for. And future me, I want to be able to look back at old me, or not young me, how do you put that? At me now. I'd like future me to be able to look back and go, nice one. Because that's not often how it works. If you've ever looked at some of your old code, your old you's an idiot. Old you didn't know much about coding. and vice versa. If you ever look back at some of your old code and go, that was awesome, wow, then you've peaked. It's depending on how you look at it, you lose either way. So the quick highlight, just to make sure you feel special. I kind of feel that what you're about to see, no one en masse has seen before. We actually did a bit of a walkthrough. There was some people at the Pivotal Initiative, Pivotal Labs, and the Cloud Foundry group, about 6 people. Spent about 3 hours. People who'd never really had great success deploying Cloud Foundry. Not putting apps on Cloud Foundry, but getting Cloud Foundry running for themselves, the feeling of ownership. And And it was very exciting. I think all 6 of them were successful. Sure, we hit some hiccups, but that was just me figuring out how to make a better product. But at the end, all 6 of them did. So that was really cool. So, and at the end of this, we were very excited. So at the end of this, we actually got a little URL for you to sort of say, if you'd like to actually, if you don't feel comfortable just following the very simple instructions, and you'd actually like your hand held through the process, which I can certainly imagine, then I think I'll actually put on take 3 hours, morning, afternoon, weekend, weekday, and yeah, we can do it. Because I think it's cool. And I'd like to see you attempt to use the tool and find out how, what it could do to make it better. But mostly I'd like to see you actually running Cloud Foundry. So, no one's ever done this. No one had really, people had run Cloud Foundry on Amazon, people had run Cloud Foundry on OpenStack, but this Bosch thing that sort of came out last year, people were a bit bemused by it and why they needed a Bosch when they had just learnt Chef. Jesus, how rude to introduce a new technology when we just learnt the last one. And this idea of how to scale it from single VM. So when Bosch came out, and we said, yes, you can run it on Amazon, but it takes 40 VMs, which is a lot if you're just wanting to poke it with a stick and see how it works. And you could spend all your pocket money really quickly. So yeah, and the other one is without lots of documentation. So last year I had started to do a bunch of documentation and tool, sort of getting started experiences around how to get started with Bosch. Because I figured if people could just run it, they would see what I saw and the potential. And I was about to rewrite the documentation. I thought, I've had enough of this documentation rubbish. It's time to write a tool because you can't.
Is it okay to ask questions?
I was going to finish the sentence first, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
I don't know what the sentence was now, so we both lose. Yeah, so I wanted to build a tool, essentially, to replace documentation. And so it asks you some questions, and then it just goes till finish. Does take 3 hours, which is, we're all going to get to know each other by the end. Well, what do you think we're going to do for 3 hours? No, but we will. I've got a couple of shortened screencasts where I'll walk it through. Go. What you got?
Quick question. Could you give a very short summary of why the Cloud Foundry group decided they needed Bosch? Why Chef didn't cut it? So it's pun intended.
I can. Firstly, I was not intending for this. I've done talks on Bosch, and this is not a Bosch talk. Not that I'm still going to answer your question. But just in case anyone's thinking I'm about to sell you Bosch, I'm not going to sell you Bosch. You're just going to use it. That's kind of the magic of what this is by the end you're like, it works, how? Well, it used Bosch and you didn't even know about it. Why Bosch? So we could start by what the others don't do, or what the net problem you're trying to solve. You're trying to build a tool that can deploy and upgrade for decades a large distributed system. Cloud Foundry is a large distributed system who has a very complex job of running other large distributed systems. And but Cloud Foundry doesn't. Cloud Foundry itself, not Bosch, but Cloud Foundry itself doesn't make any burdens on or any requirements on the infrastructure you run it on. Theoretically, there's a couple of places where it could be. Anyway, I don't know why my brain won't stop talking. So the premise is that Cloud Foundry doesn't have any restrictions. There's Iron Foundry running on Windows, for example. So there's still the problem, which I'm going to briefly sort of touch on, of how you run it. And they wanted not just how to run it, but how to own it, and how to scale it, how to think about it, and how to, they wanted a tool that owned that entire problem set. The great thing about Bosch is whilst Cloud Foundry may be the killer use for Bosch, once you've got Bosch running, you'll find actually this tool makes getting Bosch running a lot easier than, say, getting Chef server running. So, you can pay ops code all you like, but by the end of this, you'll have Bosch running, and I think it's a really wonderful tool. What else? The other reason for building this tool and hence finally getting to share it is as fun as it is to help a mailing lists. Everyone was coming from a different perspective, different thought models, different assumptions of what they were doing. Like, why Bosch? Why are you making me use this tool? without having actually touched it yet. So there's a couple of negative attitudes there up front. And so an automated tool to me made a lot of sense. And I had all this the idea. So what we've got and what we're going to sort of talk about is two tools to just separate them out. One for kickstarting getting a Bosch running, and then another one for running Cloud Foundry. And if you want to leave now, just write that down. That's it. Thank you very much. It's been real thick. So GitHub, Stark and Wayne, and you can sort of just look at the listing there. You'll see those two projects, Bosch, Cloud Foundry. Still pending a better name because it's got the two things in it, and it's hard to talk about. I refer to it as Bosch CF, and I will probably beg for another name for the rest of my life, but that's what it's called. It is a plug-in for Bosch. So we will walk through this and see what it does. So you'll feel happy and comfortable, and you will do it, and you go woohoo, and then you'll start to go backwards from there and start looking at how actually Cloud Foundry works. All right, so this is what we're going to build. We're going to boot up. This assumes you have a laptop. So what we're going to do in Amazon or OpenStack is we're going to boot up a small inception VM, which we're going to use because for a number of the actions, not necessarily when you get started, but in the life cycle of owning Cloud Foundry and Bosch, you may need to create new stem cells or Amazon images. If you've never done this before, don't worry about it. It automates it all, but you do need to be able to do it, and you need to have a presence in that same region of Amazon or OpenStack, vSphere, etc. So we're going to call it an Inception VM. You might call it a Command VM. Someone called it a CLI VM because it's where you run the CLI commands. And so that's first. Then it's going to boot up Bosch. And then the next part is where we're going to boot up the starting point of Cloud Foundry. And I think someone said you should write how much it costs. So if you'd like to all chip in 30 cents, we can get started. For the next hour of, that's about, before reserved instances and anything else, that's what it might cost. Now, at this point, we don't have, we can run apps on it. It does, the moving parts that come with this include the ability to run an app. It doesn't have any of the services like Postgres and Redis, so we'll put those on dedicated infrastructure. That's clever. Databases like memory, RAM, and you should give it to them, otherwise they get very cranky. And it's a lot easier to own and do lifecycle management on dedicated VMs that have a single thing on them. And if there's one thing you want to nurture and look after, it's your data. So even if you're just poking it with a stick, let's start where we intend to finish. We put our data on dedicated VMs. The other thing we're going to do is scale this out. We may not do it today, but the premise. The other thing you might want to do with your Cloud Foundry Heroku thing is where the apps run, and that's called the DEA. And so we might want to put more infrastructure there. And so that's the other thing. And that's pretty much, for a large portion of the population, that's Cloud Foundry. Now, you're going to get excited and you're going to want to do other stuff. It's a very different talk. You're not ready for that talk. You're probably already wondering, what's with all the boxes? Go back to the start. What was a box again? A box was a server, or in this case, Amazon VM. So if you're wondering, this is what we're going to build. We've got a couple of screencasts because it does take up some time, and much easier to do it for the screencast. That's what we're going to do. All right, so hopefully you're excited by that. We're going to talk about what is Heroku, why Cloud Foundry, all that sort of stuff. But I did want to get a little bit of excitement. There's boxes involved. It's going to be very exciting. I know your appetite is wet. All right, who am I? My name's Dr. Nic. I am Australian. I don't know what that means anymore. I've lived, I think, in 6 countries. But I don't get that excited about Australia Day anymore because you don't play cricket. And it's winter during Australia Day, so the days are short. Australia Day is a day of long, long sunshine and cricket and drinking and, Anyway, it certainly is not as well attended by the international community as, say, St. Paddy's Day, which even has a cool name. So anyway, back when I was in Australia, I actually just come back to Australia from living in other places, and I was in Sydney. I went to a local meetup, which they have in a pub. Yeah. This is very boring. We're at a pub meetup. Steak, chips, beer, it's awesome.
Welcome to Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I know. But everyone pays for their own stuff. So, you know, it's kind of... that's where I first saw Heroku. Blew my mind. Because I think I was still using a tool based off Capistrano called Deprec. That was how you could build a server. Never done any scaling work, you know, wasn't really a sysadmin person. And that's pretty much my story, is starting with, I love apps and I hate infrastructure, to, right, I hate it, but I'm going to learn a little bit about it. You keep repeating that, you know an awful lot about the thing you hate. You don't like it anymore than you did before. You just know it, and you know why you hate it. But nonetheless, so if you're going to hate something, automate it. Or you learn it once, and you don't have to know it anymore. So then I went to Engineer, which is here, in this state, up the road. Up the road, as in up 101. That was great. I learned a truck ton, right? I mean, Engineer is still you know, one of the leaders of you know, PaaS and running apps. It has a different model for app ownership than the Heroku and Cloud Foundry. Apps sort of have dedicated infrastructure. It's a bit like the LinkedIn's, not LinkedIn, Netflix's PaaS thing, which sort of puts one app on dedicated infrastructure, as opposed to Heroku and Cloud Foundry, which provisions, carve up dedicated machines and let you reuse it. Which is why I think, you know, the Heroku Cloud Foundry model is such a winner. You know, it lets you, you know, utilize resources so much more efficiently, I believe. And now doing Cloud Foundry work. So because it's being recorded and I've signed certain things, I can't tell you who it's for. But nonetheless, they are one of the thought leaders, and they believe that having Cloud Foundry as a part of their new engineering effort is significant strategic advantage. Sadly, that's why I can't tell you who it is. It's kind of win-lose. All right. So, so I started this company called Stark & Wayne, based around the idea that we all need to know how to run this stuff, and I really wanted to get this done. It does come with the help and assistance and funding of Pivotal Initiative, the owners of Cloud Foundry, so I'm really appreciative of that, and love playing with them. Look forward to building other things around Cloud Foundry. That's one of the reasons I want you all to own it, because then you'll get as shitty with it as I am. I get particularly shitty at many things, so I don't feel like Cloud Foundry is special. And we'll build stuff, and we'll have a great time. But I feel very alone, and so, you know, come with me and play. And I believe I'm the only company with not one but two fictional founders. So that's really nice to have them on board. All right, so if you don't, this is not really what is Heroku if you don't know what it is. Because if you don't know what Heroku is, I'm not sure why you're here. But this is my introduction to dumb down what is PaaS, because you're about to run one, and I think you should know what it does, the gist of it, so you can sort of start from there with a kernel of truth. So here's my demonstration of what is PaaS. It runs your apps, and it makes sure traffic can get into it. You know, I know that's earth-shattering, but just in case you were thinking it was anything more tricky. Now, I've seen Matt Kocher do talks, and I actually like your talk much better on explaining it. So I think what I've attempted to do here is to come up with the simplest introduction to PaaS. Now, and you put an API on one end, depending on how you draw the picture. Perhaps on the left, perhaps on the right. That's entirely up to you. And so, you know, if you're wondering, okay, can't be that simple, Nick, I need boxes. I can't think without boxes. Here's the boxes. And minus P, it just happens they both use minus P for port. Actually, I don't know, you know, I think Thin's porters just wrote that. I now doubt myself what Thin actually takes as that. Assume it's minus P. So you can run it, runs on a port, right? And this is what you would do to run an app. So my point of these two slides is to say that what Cloud Foundry and Heroku do is what you would have done. It's not like they're nested in a little, you know, egg basket with chocolate eggs and gooey honey, and, you know, it's all lovely times. It's just your app running on a machine with access to internet and to other things. So Postgres is going to be running somewhere, possibly on the same machine, not the best idea for production, and possibly somewhere else, better idea. But not too far away, right? You don't want to put your services on the other side of the planet, because then you'll discover what I know, which is that, you know, airlines suck. And it takes forever to put your data on an airline, you know, it's got to go through customs. Anyway, all right, I'm going to work on that joke. Okay, so the other part you might add, and perhaps the only part that really is where the platform gets in the way of this, that says, you know, I must be involved. I can't just orchestrate from the sides. I must participate. Otherwise you won't respect me in the morning. is perhaps a router. And you kind of need, and then, you know, why is the PaaS important? Why would I say the router? Because, you know, I mean, the engineer was using all sorts of open source. I mean, it's all just open source. It just happens this router was written by the Cloud Foundry team. Because there wasn't one. So we had to write one. I think we've written 3. But that doesn't matter. All right, we're still going. So, you know, it's you need to be able to programmatically tell that router changes to where the app is. So as different traffic's coming through, it needs to sort of know, as the entire system changes, where that app is running across, you know, your growing system. So the router needs to be very dynamic. And so, yeah, there are message buses around this. There are staging systems and an API and all sorts of things you would imagine if you spent time imagining it. But at its core, it's just running your app. Now, Heroku gets a little fancy and puts it inside a Linux container, and Cloud Foundry soon will have its Linux containers, and you'll feel safe and comfortable, protected from those evil people running Node.js apps. PHP, you won't know about them. You'd be happy. But nonetheless, this is it. All right. So why Cloud Foundry? Well, to start, this is, I guess I couldn't have done this next slide until David Hannemeyer Hansen recently started deciding he needed a blog. I don't know what, he must have had some spare time and was feeling frisky, so he started blogging. And he had this sort of Rails is omakase, I don't know how you pronounce it. Who wants to pronounce that word? Hey? Who wants to pronounce it confidently?
Omakase.
Omakase! All right, that was a terrible Australian interpretation of Japanese accent. So perhaps you could say that Heroku is similar, because there's this idea of, you know, as David put it, the chef who curates a meal for you. And you can't tell him he's wrong, he's the chef. And you've come to him for his curated meal. And this is what Heroku does. They've got a curated menu of a service. There's not too many options. I think the only one, so I've got, you know, there's one infrastructure which is not just Amazon, but Amazon US East. One. I say one because, you know, whoever's watching this, perhaps they'll pop up US East 2 tomorrow, maybe look silly. Virginia. And now I've heard that they've got a trial of multi-cloud in the works, but nonetheless, at the moment, one infrastructure. You've got one router mode, which wasn't, I wouldn't have even put on the slide, but just recently became very fun to talk about routers. What you should expect from a router, and New Relic, who's watching it. You get one port. Now, I'm not saying that all these things are different necessarily in Cloud Foundry, but we'll talk about why it's relevant. I mean, at where I work, the consulting, we've replaced the Cloud Foundry router with an HA proxy-based router, and we can actually give it like a file. Each app can sort of say, hey, I want this public port. So not necessarily would that work on a public cloud, but it's ours, and we know what's in each one, and so we can sort of say, I want this port, which means we can run things that need multiple ports, just in case you're wondering why. Logstash, we can run Logstash, so it can have, you know, different, its agent can be listening at different ports. It can have one port for syslog, another port for 0MQ, in and out. So, you know, it's just an example. We can change Cloud Foundry because it's open and changeable. Size of dyno. If you don't know, the dyno is 512 megabytes. As an example, Heroku Cloud Foundry does allow for different sizes, but there's not even a way, you know, they've decided that it's 512, which is primarily because of Java. They came out with Java support and they kind of needed a bigger one. Without them ever knowing that Java apps do still get beyond 512. That happens. One way to deploy, asterisk, because they now do actually, it's Git push, it's the original way, but they now are starting to share a new way, the sort of Cloud Foundry-esque way of deploying, where you sort of, the source files go straight to Heroku, rather than going to their Git repo, and then it's straight into their API. And so that's kind of cool. It's actually interesting, because we're at the Heroku, this stuff is fascinating, right? So we're at the Heroku conference, at which they kind of refused to talk about Heroku. I thought it was a bit confusing for me personally. But there was one talk called the Heroku Secrets. Had to go to that. I love secrets. And so anyway, I can't tell you. It's in the talk title. So anyway, they had some interesting new stuff, but sucks you weren't there. No, they recorded, so anyway. But really interesting. It's interesting to see what these other people are doing and to figure out, is this what we want for our cloud? You've only got one support option, which is them. If you're having problems with them, there's no other options. One database that they have supported internally, right? So, I mean, whose the responsibility is for your app running if the app's running on Heroku, the database is running on MongoHQ, the Redis is running on Redis to go. I don't know, that's for some people not the way they want to get their corporate support, and one operating system, which is Ubuntu. So the cool thing about Cloud Foundry is, any other open source PaaS, is that list of things. Do whatever you like, right? I mean, there is one distribution, there's a couple of secondary distributions. You could come up with your own. You could say, I like running it with a different router, and here it is. You can use it. Have fun. You could just share the router that you wrote and put it on the internet, and other people might pick it up. Core Cloud Foundry team might put it in their distribution. Really, once you start to understand what you want, and you start to see it's just Ruby code and a little bit of Java, a little bit of Go, you'll figure that out. And VMware, and obviously we should give them credit. Now the People Initiative, there's not a non-trivial amount of money that's been spent to get this thing to where it is. So you're not coming into a code base that just got started yesterday. So it's this is and there's a few of us here who are on the mailing list at the time, and obviously a bunch of people who are not here, and you will feel very welcome should you wish to start trying to contribute and get things going. So, I did a lot of talking there, because that's what I'm here for. But I just want to take a moment to remember that everyone deserves nice things. And so you're probably wondering, I did a lot of talking about this Cloud Foundry exists, and you're probably saying, well, I'm one of the everyones. Now I deserve nice things. Show me how to get Cloud Foundry running. And get me a beer. It doesn't work. I still haven't got one. But anyway. Ooh, I flickered. There's the theme that I have, which I love dearly, and I've been using for over a year now. For some odd reason, he put a 1 second default fade in, fade out. And I don't know how to make it go away permanently. So I tend to forget that it's there right up until it starts flashing at me. And anyway, but I do love this slide deck, and people say, oh, that's awesome, where do you get it from? A, I don't remember, and B, you're not having it. All right, so deploy time. So this does take under 3 hours. And we are aggressively looking at ways, the different parts of it. So once you've automated all of it, I've done my automation based on user experience. The core team is also doing a bunch of automation as part of Jenkins. So Travis, sort of doing it completely automatically and protecting future releases by does it work in a fully automated fashion. And so it's very interested in getting this time down. But you don't notice this time until you've actually automated it. Because before it was fully automated, it was a lot longer than 3 hours to learn and to make mistakes. And I think you were showing it took you a month to get it all running. So let's put it in context. All right, we've gone from a month to a few hours. I need to tell you that because you're all probably thinking, oh, I've got 3 minutes, let's get cracking. No. You need to allocate some time, all right? Now, if you just want to use Cloud Foundry, you go to cloudfoundry.com, you go to AppFog, you go to someone else. There are commercial people doing distros, Tier 3, Staccato. So, if you don't want to do the 3 hour, don't want to own it, you just want to use it, great, go and get one of those. What I'm really interested in is getting people who want to be part of it, build it, change it, own it, turn this into a profession perhaps, want to bring it into your own organizations. So this is what we're going to do. Alrighty. So the first part, so these are screencasts and I will talk through them. I don't think I can pretend to talk as if I'm doing it live. I think it'd be a neat trick. So next I'm going to do such and such. So it will be a little third party even though it's me. All right. So let's watch the mysterious typing magician. Oh, this is weird. Let me just pretend I'm typing. Except I can't see it here. It's just a still screen. So I have to watch with you. I should sit at the front and drink beer and go, oh, look. So anyway, there is a current problem. We are a Ruby group, so someone might be able to fix this for me. But when I install the Bosch Bootstrap gem, it blows up and says you don't have the right version of NetSSH. Even though it's in the gem file. Blows my mind. So anyway, if someone can fix that, it'd be awesome. Anyway, so there's only really one command to run, which is Bosch Bootstrap deploy. The SSH ones you'll see later on, how to get into the Inception VM. If you've ever used Fog before, it does find your Fog file and makes it even quicker to get started. For most of you, probably you'll just put in your AWS credentials, and it's just all defaults. Yes, they're all defaults. You don't care. What do you know? And so it's setting up some all the stuff you need. You don't know what you don't know. So just press 1, you get an Inception VM. All right? And this looks like an error, but what it's just doing is really just saying the file system's not ready, the volume's not ready, it's not ready, now it's ready, and mounts it. I do think I'll hide that because it looks a lot like an error. And so now what it's taking is taking a vanilla Ubuntu VM, which doesn't have stuff on it that we need, and sort of turning it into something, which is what you might use Chef for. But again, this is just the starting, this is my command VM. And I don't know, it's a little dull watching it, quite frankly, even though I cut it back. I think at this juncture, at some point, I do skip ahead because this is tedious.
What Linux version does this VM run?
The Inception VM, I think it's currently is 10.4. There's a group of tickets for upgrading it to 12.04. Mostly because we want the Btrfs file system. Very excited about that for the stem cell building. Which would require me to explain what it is in order for you to all bask and share on the excitement of Btrfs. But anyway, if you've ever built Cloud Foundry, which at the back, the tallest man in the room, Matt, he is the core developer. You know, Matt, put your hand up. Yep. See, that's how tall he is. Look, it's enormous. And he does the Cloud Foundry, which uses a lot of the same tool chain, but it builds every package of Cloud Foundry sequentially from source. So, you know, if you build by the hour, anyway, it takes fucking ever. All right, so I should really talk through this. So part of what we're doing here is we're actually downloading machine images, but it's generic, so it's not Amazon specific. It downloads a generic image ready for becoming an Amazon instance, but it's not yet an AMI, and it actually is going to create an Amazon instance. You don't have to know how that works, just does it. So there's this idea that once you go into vSphere or OpenStack where you don't have access to public internet, this stuff all still works. So now what we're doing is this is running from your laptop, telling the Inception VM to create Bosch. Just sort of telling it because it needs to have access to the internet. And so what it's doing at this point is that 12-minute step there where it's I skipped over it because 12 minutes is really boring, is it's creating an AMI. So at that point, if you were to check your Amazon console, you'd see a new AMI and be feeling very special with yourself. There you go. That's where it finished, creating an AMI. Because that's how you boot VMs. So it's an AMI with everything on it to become Bosch. That's how you want to distribute systems, really, isn't it? It's very cool. And Bosch, like all of Cloud Foundry, like all of Bosch, the micro Bosch is no different. We have a pattern of a VM has optionally one mounted disk. So you can have no mounted disk or one mounted disk, but it's the disk that it sort of makes the VM become a sort of persistent concept, even if you want to scale it. La 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 da. It's starting stuff. It just blows my mind that this works. What that means is when it doesn't work, I have my expectations suitably managed. No, I mean there's a lot of work going into this stuff, and especially I believe we're going to ship the Bosch team are going to ship a new set of pre-AMIs. So this thing will go from taking, what does it took 20 minutes down to about 5 minutes. Of course, thanks to my tremendous screencasting skills, you wouldn't appreciate that. But that's going to be awesome. And that's what I'm saying. This 3-hour-long process can be incrementally shortened by publishing more pre-baked things, because with they're doing a whole bunch of automation, and so they just keep shipping new stem cells. It just becomes a function of which ones they want to make public. And now it's doing stuff like creating an account on Bosch so that you can access it. you could do all this manually. The docs are getting really good, and you can follow the docs and do this manually. And this is just following the steps in a automated fashion.
You've used the term stem cell several times.
I did.
Assume you're not talking about bioengineering, so could you?
So we have a lot of North Koreans and on the team, and stem cell experts, they told us. And apparently it's really good for... No, okay. So I don't know if the word stem cell comes from any of the different distro. Does anyone... I mean, I first heard it from the Bosch team. Does it come from any of the different distros? I mean, it's like a stage... I kind of imagine it like a stage 4 Gen 2 thing. It's the thing before you make... I don't know. It's... You guys want to explain it?
Sure. It's the Amazon machine image that Bosch then turns into any kind of machine that you want it to be. So it has the bare minimum of an operating system on it. So then when you boot that up and then you install packages on it and turn it into various things. And so any machine in your architecture comes from a stem cell.
So stem cells is sort of a description of what the base AMI is.
It's very much an AMI on EC2.
Is this literally an AMI, or is it a definition?
It's a tarball that you can turn into an AMI, or you just...
So is there anything left to do when it takes that tarball, which is the thing we downloaded? Is there anything that's done to it before it becomes an AMI, or is it just laid out on a volume, snapshotted, and...
Exactly that.
All right.
But for OpenStack or vSphere, there are other processes for turning those into the same thing as an AMI.
Yeah. But it's notable that you can sort of see it if we were to go back up, that it was an AWS stem cell. So the final touches to turn it into an Amazon specific thing have all been done as part of the download.
Sort of the cloud and kind of stuff you have to do in order to basically make it bootable and be able to log into the image.
Right, the various things to retrieve the metadata from Amazon.
Yep.
from
Gotcha.
SSH.
And so really all that's been doing is the IAS specific stuff, like for Amazon, it's, put it on a volume, snapshot it, publish it as an AMI. So at the end, we now have a Bosch. You don't know what to do with it, so just trust me, you should be feeling very awesome at this point.
Will there possibly be an upcoming visual architectural summary of what just happened at the CLI, or is it pretty much asked to do a quick?
We can go back to the boxes if you felt like there was a not sufficient number of boxes.
Oh, okay.
Right, let's go back to the boxes. So at this point, I don't want to trivialize the answer, but I mean, this is no. No, the answer is no. All the good visuals have already come and gone. This is the answer. So what we did was we booted the Inception VM. It does have an attached volume. That's only because the base image is only a base file system of 8 gig, and there are certain actions that you will eventually want to do as an owner of Cloud Foundry Bosch that like create new stem cells, and you're going to want more space. So anyway, and also so you can shut it down, bring it back up. Bosch also has an attached volume again, so you can upgrade it. So that process that we did to boot it is essentially the same process. If a new stem cell comes out tomorrow, right? So they're working on a new version of the stem cell, the Bosch Micro Bosch. Let's put it that way. New version of this base stem cell that gets turned into an AMI and booted. The whole process for upgrading is the same automated process. It just shuts down all the contents, and this is the same for all these VMs. This is the same life cycle, right? So I'll say it over and over again. It shuts down what's on it, detaches the volume, deletes the VM, creates a new VM with perhaps a new base image, a different size image, a different size instance, and then reattaches the volume, mounts it, starts stuff. Bingo, we're back in business. That's completely automated. Should blow your mind. And if it doesn't, then I feel very envious of whatever profession you have. That means you don't know that. So I feel very special for you. But I remember when I first saw the demo of this in April last year. Sorry, I'll come to you in a second. Bosch was released in sort of April 13 last year on a Wednesday. And I know this because I immediately said to the Cloud Foundry people I'm visiting tomorrow, because, this stuff was interesting when I was working in engineering. We, should be interested in this sort of technology, and it was open source. And they showed me a demo of this thing working, doing exactly what I just told you. They had vCenter running, because vCenter was much more verbose about what was going on. Amazon, you got to keep pressing refresh button to be told anything. And it would go through this process. And I thought, I'll buy 7. Where do I give you money? Tell me. And that's when I fell in love with it. So, and I also fell in love with the fact that it had a packaging system, because we were using Gentoo at Engine Yard. So we basically had Bosch, except we built it ourselves. And I wasn't that in love with it. Like most of us aren't that in love with their own stuff. It's like, you've got shiny toys, I want yours. Even if it doesn't work, it can't work as, it not working is cooler than ours kind of working. But that pattern is the same for when Bosch goes to start booting up the Cloud Foundry VMs, or whatever it is you're using Bosch for, that same process. And that's what it automates. So why Bosch instead of Cloud Foundry? Because it does all that. Question?
Yeah. So this process can take like 3 hours. How much of that, if any, could be done at the same time as your existing Bosch is running? You just said you're going to knock down your system in order to build up a new system. But wouldn't you want to actually build up a new system while the old system's running and then shift over somehow?
So the 3 hour thing is the first time, because you've got nothing.
Okay.
And there is no public AMIs in this story, but we will hopefully have public AMIs for the Amazon part of it anyway. But if you're on OpenStack, and again, 3 hours is based on CPU time and network, how long it takes. This would be a lot faster if a lot of the assets were in Amazon. They're currently coming from a data center in Las Vegas. So every file first wants to go and have some, I can't even tell Las Vegas jokes straight. All right, just make up your own Las Vegas joke. The data has a good time, and then it gets to you. Right?
Whatever happens in Las Vegas.
Yeah, whatever happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, and it's just taking a sweet ass time getting to your VM. And it's even slower. I was booting it up on in Oregon data center, Amazon. Seems slower, so but there are things we can do. So anyway. So we have to build an AMI. It automates this. Now, if one exists, great, we'll use it. But the great thing is it can do everything from scratch, which means that you can go, if someone's the story I have in my head, and there's a guy called Martin. So I always tell a story with his name, because he's the one that this is where this happens all the time. I say Martin. He says, I've already fixed that, so I'm master. The fuck am I supposed to do with that? How do I take, what does master mean? Master what? Nothing good is on master. Release something, give me a thing that you promise works. So, but the tool chain, and the tools, the Bosch Bootstrap tool actually has the flag. So you can go Bosch Bootstrap deploy, and then the flag is edge stem cell. And it completely automates building from master. So really, there should be another flag called what Martin told me to do.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on making a high availability thing when you are upgrading, let's say, you're detaching a volume,
Yep.
and then you're replacing a VM. Let's say if the end users want to have high availability application, what are the thoughts?
So the general answer
how would you do it?
So the general answer to any high availability problem is more infrastructure. In more of it, more in different places.
Right. You double it, but let's
You'd keep doubling, and then
How
you
would
don't
you
have
do it?
enough. All right, so Bosch doesn't just tear everything down when it wants to and bring it back up. And again, I don't really, happy to talk about Bosch all day long. It's awesome. But the general solution is it will upgrade. You can sort of say in what batches to upgrade. So say you've got 50 Postgres VMs, and you say, I want to upgrade the stem cell. It's not going to just go and tear them all down. It will progressively go through. Some parts of the system are more sensitive to change, right? I mean, Bosch doesn't fix your problem of you taking Postgres away, unless you fix the problem of you taking Postgres away, right? You use Postgres, it's your problem.
Yeah.
Use Cassandra, where it's much more resilient to things disappearing. But the DEAs, for example, you take a DEA away, well, Cloud Foundry, not Bosch, but Cloud Foundry was built to deal with that. You take a DEA away, each DEA will disappear. Cloud Foundry Health Manager will say, hey, we just lost a truck ton of apps.
Create a new one.
And the cloud controller will say, not a problem, go and boot them up another one. So you'll be deleting the DEAs, the apps will be moving across and progressively roll away. So it's not up to Bosch, or Bosch can't fix the problem of what happens when stuff gets turned off. But Cloud Foundry is built to deal with that.
So essentially, this calls for, especially if you want to automate the the upgrade or whatever, the downtime, you probably would then go to like in writing something like chef scripts to create replication and automate some of that in case, let's say, whatever happens with your production environment.
And there's a growing number of people as they come to Cloud Foundry. So one of the ways to get high availability is to run on vSphere. I mean, you can just delegate the problem away. You say, hey, vSphere, I'm going to give you a truck ton of money. You make sure I don't have to worry about this stuff. And that's kind of what they did. So Bosch initially didn't really have resilient features like if a VM disappears, what happens next? Because that use case never turned up. That's what you get when you pay money to VMware. You know, it pretends that your VMs don't die. It's really cool. Expensive, but cool. Actually using vSphere, not so cool. That's why Bosch is actually, if you live with vSphere, and it blows my mind just starting to look at how vSphere is used by humans. There is a great example for why Bosch. It's like, you mean it automates vSphere away? That's sweet. Yeah. As more and more people, especially the core Cloud Foundry group, care more and more about Amazon, I believe that will drive more resilient features, at least bringing dead VMs back. And but you know, you kill Postgres, it's gone unless you've got a secondary Postgres and it fails over. And again, that's the tier above Bosch.
Yeah.
The VMs themselves have to deal with, you know.
All right.
Sorry, I can't sell that feature to you, but obviously as more and more people care about this stuff, more and more people will start to focus on resilience and add those features.
Also too is the infrastructure as a service kind of moves up. I think, correct me if you disagree, but it seems like they're starting to solve a lot of those problems or addressing.
You think Amazon cares about its VM staying up? Or is that what you said? I don't want to disagree with you.
I look more.
Just
at
haven't
OpenStack.
seen that as a character
I'm
trait.
looking more at OpenStack, and actually people were building stuff on top of OpenStack to basically help with, you know, sort of keep.
Absolutely. I mean, there are options.
You know, heartbeat options. You know, making sure that you know X number of instances of particular type of VM.
But it's an important characteristic of the cloud, whatever that is to everyone, that it at a large enough scale, for long enough, shit breaks. And perhaps if it happens often enough, you start dealing with it in a professional fashion, as opposed to, yeah, shit broke last night. Someone's on call, we fixed it, we're all good. You know, so if it happens more often at a large enough scale, you're going to automate it, which is where you know, that's part of the Netflix engineering story. Why we love it so much. They got monkeys. I mean, that's got to be legal. I'm not sure if they're allowed to do that in California, but I would have thought that was, you know, probably one of those world animal things probably would have called them, but I guess they hang out in different circles and never found out about the monkey problem. But yeah, I mean, but when you run small scale things, it's harder to get resilience because you can't afford necessarily to have 7 copies of everything. Somewhere I don't feel like I've answered the question, but the problem's still going to be the same. Is if you're small, perhaps you don't see the problem as often, but you can't afford necessarily to do HA. You go big, the problem will turn up, but hopefully you've got enough infrastructure that you can work around the problem.
Yeah, what I was actually getting at is that there are people other than Cloud Foundry addressing this issue of increasing resiliency, and that although Cloud Foundry is working solutions, there are people who potentially who can basically solve the problem for Cloud Foundry.
True, vSphere. I mean, I mentioned vSphere as one end of the spectrum, right?
But yeah, that's one answer. And the other, and the open source. So there are people building on top of OpenStack.
I would hope. Once they get OpenStack working, and then move on to making it work more often. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
What? You can't make OpenStack jokes? All right, fine. We'll move on to Mongo. Whatever's popular, we can make jokes about that. All right. So who am I? I should follow the slides again. No. Okay. Flashing. At the very least, the flashing prevents you from quickly getting slides. All right, so just to recap, we've bootstrapped Bosch. You don't know what Bosch is yet, having nonetheless heard people talk about it. What you really care about is getting Cloud Foundry. So think of Bosch as your little, your outer paths. You're now going to bootstrap your inner paths, the useful one. All right, so now, whereas the Bosch bootstrap ran from our laptop, and we created the Inception VM, and we told the Inception VM to continue, from now on, we're actually going to go inside the Inception VM, and that's kind of where we work, which is why some people call it the CLI VM. That's where you do CLI stuff. So this is basically it's an extension to the Bosch command line tool, because Bosch is like a growing number of tools. VMC, for example, can support plugins. And but you don't really know how Bosch works. Just follow the commands that are in the instructions. Worry about what Bosch is later. So let's get cracking. So essentially you run it and you just say yes to the defaults. And the more I make people watch this, the more I want to make those defaults even not be asked publicly. And so now it's a bit of an ugly sort of stop point here, but what it's saying is it's provisioning an IP address, you've given it DNS, and then it complains to you that it's not wired up, which is a bit rough because you only just got it. But you do at this point need to go into your DNS provider, wherever you're doing the name serving stuff, and set this up. Now, if your time to live TTLs are very large, you should go and watch some sport and come back. If you've got like 60 seconds or 1 minute, then it should resolve. So here it fails quickly, and then I wait 60 seconds, and then it continues on. So you just keep running the command until it validates. Because I like to fail fast, because some of this stuff suck trying to debug, and you don't know how to debug it, so it's a bit rough to make you debug something that you don't know what it is yet. So we're trying to just fail quickly. Now, at this point is we are, how do I put it? The net job of this tool is essentially to generate the large YAML manifest that Bosch needs. But first, you've got an empty Bosch, there's nothing on it. You need a release, you need Cloud Foundry. What is Cloud Foundry? And you need that base stem cell that we were talking about before. And this is what it's doing, it's saying, hang on a second, you don't have any Cloud Foundry. You need some Cloud Foundry. I'm going to get you some Cloud Foundry. You just sit there and relax. You're all very tense. This is relaxing time. Look, color. This is my favorite part of Bosch. Colors. So look at this. So if you've ever done Gentoo or ever built your own distro, then I've never done it. It's an awful thing. You shouldn't. But this is essentially it. It's got all the parts, not of a distro so much of. This is, instead of using Debian, we don't have any external dependencies. Conceptually, we could have used Debian packages as a packaging system and could have had them our own Debian server, but nonetheless, that's not what we're doing, but the metaphor is there. So there's packages and jobs, and there are plenty of talks that I guess I've done that talk a bit more about what is Bosch. In fact, the best one was the most one was the one I did at LinkedIn about 8 or 9 months ago, called Bosch, What, Where, How, or something like that. So that's why I don't really want to talk about Bosch, because rather you got this running and go, right, that Bosch thing, what is it? And then go watch that talk. So the other thing we have to do automatically is there is no stem cell, base stem cell, which Matt was still talking about, that thing that's just the bare minimum of something that could become something. It's potential. That's what we should call it. It's the potential stem cell. It's all potential. It uploads that. At this point, it has become an AMI, I think, somewhere in here. One of these is probably really long. That one there, that looks like that's become an AMI. This is what it generated for you. This is the more important part. You could have done those steps yourself. It really wasn't that hard. This is really hard to document and tell people what to do with it. YAML, I have a particular dislike of YAML when it comes to system configuration, because YAML parsers and YAML producers don't keep comments. So even if you were thinking of like documenting and commenting this thing, you couldn't. That's the gist. That job thing, that were the parts that were going to run on that VM. Just to start to show you where stuff is. So this is where that file was that we just looked at, but there's an intermediate file. There's the file that actually is the core of the information you gave it, and why these two tools sort of attempt to be idempotent. So you sort of put in the information you gave it, sort of. Most of this is just default values that I hard-coded for you. All right, so we have done phase one, and what it's saying is you haven't deployed yet. But we have uploaded the Bosch release of Cloud Foundry, which is about 1.5 gigs, which is why I like to do on the Inception VM, because most of us don't have very fast internet. And I come from Australia, where you know, we share floppy disks from house to house, and eventually it gets to where it's going. So now what it's doing, so the deploy process actually does package compilation. Only once you've compiled a package, never does it again, but that's kind of cool. So it doesn't go and install the Java from source every time. It does it once and puts it in its own little blob store and reuses it. And that's great because, again, it means that if you're running Bosch inside an infrastructure that does not have access to the internet, it's all self-contained. If you have an internet outage, you can keep booting up Bosch. Even if you do have internet access, if you have an outage, your system is still self-contained. So we booted up a VM, so on Amazon it takes a few minutes, and then updating, that's where it becomes something. This is the cool part. This is where a blank VM based on the base stem cell says, hello, what would you like me to become? And it says, I'd like you to become Core. I'd like you to become Postgres. I'd like you to become something. It downloads packages, creates some monitor scripts, and starts it. And at this point, we have Cloud Foundry running, conceptually. The unfortunate truth is last night, when I was doing this, at this point it does not work. Which you might think is a terrible thing. You say, that's a terrible demo. What's the point of doing a demo of something where at the end it doesn't work? So I'm here to tell you that I did that on purpose. So oh shit, I didn't even look at the slide. It doesn't segue into the next thing at all. Right. We'll come back to that with my excellent segue on why I deliberately broke Cloud Foundry. I didn't. But what we'll do is we'll actually attempt to investigate why it's broken. Because once you've got it running, that's great, but you still think it's a black box. And I just want you to know that this thing is a completely discoverable, understandable system that you can look at. It's running your app. You can see where the app runs. It's something you could understand. You know it's true because I can understand it. And I'm not that bright. I just, don't have the same inhibitions to talking in public as you do. So at this point, I decided I was going to cut it and tell that rather interesting segue. So first, let's assume it worked. You're feeling very excited, and the actual good news is that if we haven't all fallen, we're going pretty well. What we can do is the patch for the fix. So we're going to do the screencast where we look at debugging it and we look at what patches are available. They don't fix the problem, we go to bed. The next day is today, and we're all here. And I believe the patch is available. So perhaps we can fix it live, and that would be very exciting. I personally am excited, and to some degree that's all that matters. You flip that around where you're excited and I don't want to be here, it's awkward. So the tool currently, the Cloud Foundry tool, the extension to Bosch for you managing Cloud Foundry and not having to know too much Bosch is this very simple sort of experience. Now, if as more and more people use it, you might say, well, how do I add routers? How do I scale it out? Great, then we'll solve that problem. But for the moment, let's just start with this experience. So, as I said, that first VM, we go back to this picture. Really wish that's the squares. Oh, I've got squares over here. So we had the inception VM, we had a Bosch or a micro Bosch, and then we booted up core 0. The 0 is just an index. So think of it as a cluster of VMs, and I just get used to Bosch terminology. So I call it the core, and it's running a router, so that it has the internet coming into it. Remember, the internet is really important. You've probably heard about it. And the router is going to know about all the different apps you're running and what their URLs are. And it's going to know which node, Ruby, PHP, Java app to send it to. Now, where it's going to route it to is the DEA. So by default, it runs a DEA. And my DEA stands for Department of Enforcement. The Droplet Execution Agent is a much better name.
Yeah,
agents.
whatever that was.
So it's still got agent in it. It still sounds like law enforcement. So it's the thing. It's like a dynamic Nginx. I don't know. Runs apps. That's not even true. Look. It listens out for requests to say anyone want to run an app. And whichever DEA responds first wins. And then it goes and gets the source code for the app, which in Heroku terminology would be called the slug. We call it the droplet. Now, if it was called the slug, it would be called C, slug execution engine. And that would go nicely with cloud computing. You have a whole beach metaphor. We should look at that. See, this is the kind of top level thinking I bring to the project. To get right on that. No, you want hard constants. Got to stay away from the soft vowels. So anyway, the DEA, so it runs the apps. So it's not that the router is going to route traffic to the DEA, so much as it's going to route traffic to the apps that it's spawned up. All right, what else is on there? NATS, which is a message bus, and you might ask the very intelligent question of why did they invent their own message bus?
Yeah.
Don't know. Because Derek Collison likes writing message buses.
That's it.
He wrote, he was the Tibco, is it Tibco?
Yeah, Tibco.
Yeah. Why write a message bus in Ruby? It's a perfect good language to write a message bus.
Wasn't there talk of porting to RabbitMQ?
I think they did try Rabbit, and it turns out it's not necessarily. Well, I think historically they may have some problems for Rabbit, which I'm sure are all fixed now. But no, there are other options. It's a message bus, so as long as you get the protocol correct, different people. I think Josh Long said that he's done an adapter into Java message queues, so as long as you get the protocol right,
I don't
you
know.
can replace
There
it.
are a lot of enterprise applications that seem to work just fine with RabbitMQ, so I can never understand why it wasn't sufficient for Cloud Foundry.
You're asking intelligent questions. It's open source, and you can replace it with something else. Please share it. So, what else? There is a cluster version, and that's at least it's not a single point. Well, we haven't actually used it yet, so I guess no one's ever proven not to be clustered. What else? There's other stuff, right?
Controller.
What's not on this VM is services. So there's no Postgres service, no Redis, Mongo, and all this stuff. And I mentioned that before because I don't believe in it. Yay!
You don't believe in in-memory data?
I don't believe that, it's really hard to get off. Like, you've started that first experience where you put some data on your Postgres and say, well, I'd like Postgres to move over there. Not so easy. So I'd rather not do things I can't do. Let's just start Postgres and Redis on different VMs. So when we run those commands, we're going to start up a new VM, say called Redis 0. And actually it's going to be called Redis _ M1 small. But, that doesn't, it's got Redis on it. Whee! And the other thing it's got on it, it's got Redis, because, we're offering Redis to the service. So we didn't re-implement Redis in Ruby. We're not completely idiots. So it does have Redis. But what it does have is the Cloud Foundry sort of representative, the escort for Redis. So it sort of says, look, Redis, you keep being Redis, I'll be Cloud Foundry, it'll be lovely. We'll go to the beach. And we call that the Redis node. And so for each of the different VMs that run Redis or Postgres, there is a node, a service node. Now, what that does is when that VM comes up, it says, hello, I'm Redis. Well, I'm not Redis. I represent Redis. He's lovely. You're going to have a great time. It's like an agent. Except we've already used the word agent. We need a different word. But if you're from Las Vegas, Hollywood, sort of agents. Anyway, all right. So I'm going to work on my metaphors. So it sort of announces to the message bus saying, I am available for all your Redis needs. And you're probably thinking, that's awesome. I should use Redis. Just remember, only use Redis if you don't care about your data. Okay, sorry, let's move on. It is an in-memory database, and it does store to disk on occasion. All right, so if you're okay with that, just remember that's what it does. But it is really fast, because memory is fast. So if something's really fast, probably a reason for it. Okay, so the other thing you need is a gateway. So the gateway is the thing that listens out for all the Redis parts. So Redis node says, hello, something's listening for it. And to make it extensible, we don't just want to put all of that in one piece of code, because then we'd have to keep patching it. For every new type of node, we'd have to change the cloud controller or the API. So instead, that's right, there's the cloud controller, otherwise known as the API, is on that. So we have a pair, a thing called a gateway. So if there's a Redis node, there's a Redis gateway. And so if we turn on the Redis node, we're going to run the Redis gateway. And I may be over talking about this, but I kind of want you to get a feel, at least I'm excited about it. Perhaps you can sell that for something. But I mean, so this is the gist, right? This is real things running, and they're all discoverable. You can look at them and understand how it works. For the DEA, when we start adding DEA VMs using the command, it actually stops running it there and starts running over there. So from Cloud Foundry's perspective, what will happen? DEA will stop, it'll turn off all the apps, it'll have a little bit of downtime, but that's your own fault for having a single VM. You shouldn't do that, you should run a large cluster. So you're probably not having, there's not a major outage for anyone, that's my point. Yes, your apps will turn off, relax. The DEA springs back up, so the health manager, which is also running here, is going, hello, I'm having major problems. All the apps have disappeared. Could you please start them up? And the cloud controller is going, I'd love to, but none of the DEAs are reporting back saying they're available because you don't have any DEAs temporarily. So the new DEAs appear, they say, give me some apps. The apps restart. You didn't know Cloud Foundry could be so exciting. If you have more of them, they'll balance out. So again, the premise is the fuller the VM is, full of stuff, the slower it will be to respond. And that's its kind of load balancing mechanism for how it's all spread out. And at the moment, that's what the Bosch Cloud Foundry tool can do. Now, Bosch, the Bosch distribution of Cloud Foundry actually has lots of stuff in it. Like there's a marketplace, I haven't run. There's a Go router, there's an alternate router, which I haven't run yet. And lots of stuff, different types of services, haven't run them. I'd be busy. But it is open source. And you might say, well, I really, really need Mongo. And I will first try to convince you don't. And then we can go and add Mongo. So it's relatively followable, and I did promise someone else I would write up how to add other services. That would be clever for me to do that, because then they'll do the work and I won't have to. So that's kind of, this is owning it. So I didn't do the running that because it's kind of boring. But the way Bosch works, at this point, we haven't actually compiled Redis. I think that's accurate. We definitely haven't compiled the Redis node. We definitely haven't compiled the Redis gateway package. And if you actually ran these commands and deploy, you would watch it then go and say, hang on, and go and compile those packages for the first time. So it only compiles whatever's necessary. So even though the Bosch release for Cloud Foundry is 50 packages and a gig and a half, it only compiles what's necessary.
You're actually talking about compiling from source?
Yep.
Why? Why not use
It's awesome.
Okay, but it's awfully expensive.
Well, we don't want to do that.
Why not use a package repo for whatever?
What's in the package repo?
What's that?
What's in it? I have no idea what's in the Redis package from a Debian. And I have no idea how I turn on different... sorry, I'm kind of answering the question whilst I'm being a little bit of a smart ass. The answer to the question is this allows you to be very exact and explicit about exactly what package is in your distribution.
Yeah,
so,
and it gives you the OS independence because, yeah.
Exactly. So we do want, as a community, we do want to support Red Hat.
But it's really expensive to compile everything.
Once, yeah, it takes time. So when it does the package compilation and then
an upgrade comes up and you got to do it all over again. Compile from source.
It's completely automated. Takes, I mean, the longest package I've ever built, the second longest was ImageMagick. I think it takes about 20 minutes on an M1 medium. But the longest is Perl, which takes about 30 minutes.
It's all regular expressions.
Hey?
It's all regular expressions.
It's right. Building itself from itself. It's one long string, but it's really good. So yeah, but there are parts of Cloud Foundry that are pre-compiled binaries. So the Postgres package is a pre-compiled version of vFabric's Postgres. Found that out the other day. But it does mean if you've got, if you know where you're going to deploy it, and you've already got use them. But I mean, they have to. It can compile everything completely automatically. And it's only slow the first time. Then it's already done it.
Until you have to upgrade. And then
Yep. And the part that's slow for that is when you change your app. Because it's going to try and compile Ruby apps, which generally don't do a lot of stuff in the compiling department, but nonetheless. All right, so I promised you debugging, and we've been at this for an hour and a quarter. And but this, I think, if you've gone this far and it felt awkward enough that you don't feel like you can walk out on me, I'm going to keep you. So, because I think this, again, what I'm partly is saying, this tool's really simple. You can do it. And if you don't feel like you can do it or don't have success, let's sit down for a few hours and we'll do it. I'm really interested to see you have success and run Cloud Foundry. Because it's cool. It's fun. You own your own Cloud Foundry. You own your own Heroku. How freaking cool is that? Right. So this was the problem. Now, if you've ever seen Java before, you'll have noticed that looks a lot like a Java bug. We only have one thing in Cloud Foundry, which is Java, which is the UAA, the sort of the SSO single sign-on part. And so you immediately know it's causing you grief. So I just wanted to sort of go through and create a ticket, and I found this patch. So someone was submitted a thing, something to do with the UAA. I don't know how it works. I don't know how you configure it, but it's got the right name. So, so what we'll do is we'll look at the URLs. Number 34, I'm going to create a new ticket. I tend to talk through tickets so that other people who come my way, it's Googleable, you know, if I forget, I don't finish, you know, at least document my thinking. So this is kind of good if no one's around. Sometimes like Martin or Matt or, you know, Peter Nordis are actually online. And so while I'm busy just dumping my thoughts of my bug as I'm trying to fix it for myself, they'll start commenting and I'll go away, leave me to, let me debug this on my own. So anyway, but then, you know, sometimes you actually want help and that's not so easy to find sometimes because, you know, some people sleep. It turns out that there are people in the world who sleep. And I think that's, you know, inconvenient. So anyway, all I'm trying to do here is just demonstrate that creating tickets is a natural part of owning Cloud Foundry. And I say that because where I work, where we own Cloud Foundry, they use it just like any other enterprise thing. You know, if it doesn't work, they think of, you know, how can we fix it ourselves, or what are we going to do? And I say, well, I already created a ticket, so there's a ticket for the UAA, not this one, but another one about how can we do single logout. And we're having a very healthy discussion on that feature, whether we want it, how does it work, and but not one of the people where I work would have thought to have done that. And I think it's a really invaluable part of it being an open source project is to go back and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. What does anyone else think of this feature? Perhaps we'll work on it, perhaps we won't. Let me, you know, let's at least agree on an architecture or a plan. So I'm just trying to show you ticket documentation here. And yeah, I'm copying and pasting. Because I'd like you to do this too. Submit useful tickets. As opposed to, it didn't work. It's all your fault. Not so helpful. All right, so we paste it in there, and then we say, and I just, you know, sort of just want to document that I know there's this other ticket, and I'm going to go and check it. This is interesting because what I show you is how to change Cloud Foundry deployment, how to develop Cloud Foundry, how to bring in a patch. So when someone on the mailing list tells you, yes, it's fixed on master, you will feel confident that you could actually apply that patch using the same tool chain. All right, so what we're doing, so this is where it's actually, damn it, Nicholas, slow down. So one of the parts here is you can sort of see, this is where I actually have the CF release. I actually put it the branch, sub-branch, just because I found that switching between branches wasn't necessarily gave me a nice experience. So if you do want to install a different branch, we'll put a different subfolder. It's not very Git-like, but it worked for me. So what we're doing is we're adding in this branch, this fork, checking it out. I probably should use that homebrew or that hub project, but anyway. So we're bringing the source code in. This could be yours, right? You could have been making patches and you just want to bring them in and test them out. And this is the good part, right? You could just rerun the cf prepare system command, and it should automatically go through and upload that new version. Actually, it's not correct. It's a different command. I've watched this twice and didn't notice. It's actually called bosh cf upload release. But anyway, so this is the real bosh commands, because all we're doing is automating bosh. I'm not cheating. I want you to use bosh, but I want you to approach bosh when you're good and ready. So anyway, this is the command. We run create release, and it goes through and figures out what's changed. And so you can sort of see, you're kind of looking only at the one where it says dev version. So you can sort of see, these are the only 3 packages that were changed. All the rest of them didn't change. And so when it goes about creating a release, this is my point, that yes, it's 3 hours the first time, it's 5 seconds every other time, or 10 minutes, a couple of minutes. And this is completely automated. So you may have Debian, you feel good about Chef, but I bet you it's not as automated as this from a complete lifecycle perspective. All right, so once we've created a new thing, so basically the YAML file, if you look inside, it's a bunch of shards. It's now uploading it. So it creates a release that says, hey, they're only 260 kilobytes different. So that's all it's going to upload. 1.5 gig the first time, 260 kilobytes the second time. Now we're cooking. And then we are going to actually run the deploy. Bosh deploy, it just confirms that you're changing the version. You're not changing any other part of the deployment. That's another part of Bosh. You could change the size of the VM. Go from M1 small to M1 medium. It would say, is that what you want? And they would automate through that. So here we're doing a Bosh deployment where we change the package. So the jobs, finished. Now let's see if it works. I don't want you to get too excited. I will break your little hearts. But this tool chain is awesome. And it's a different error. So anyway, but I do believe that the bug is now fixed, and if it wasn't, sort of 8:30, I'd show it to you. Okay, so I you should play with technology for its own sake. Quite frankly, you're here at a meetup. You've probably got, you all look good looking. You've probably got spouses and stuff. You spend a suitable amount of time with them, but not too much. Okay, that's my professional career advice. And manage their expectations of you. Push back if they ask me. Anyway, so career. I honestly believe that this is a definite career here in whatever fashion, whether it's being working for Pivotal Initiative, whether it's working for one of the other companies that want Cloud Foundry, whether it's just bringing it into your company and looking after it and on being an advocate for it. This thing is, I definitely believe a PaaS will succeed. Like hang on, let me just finish this. So I do believe, if you're running an infrastructure company, if you're running cloud, if you've got a VP, an ISP, I believe each of them will offer a PaaS of some sort. And I've been watching this space for a very long time. The Cloud Foundry project was leaps ahead of both momentum and toolchain, right? So yes, OpenShift exists, but they have not shipped a toolchain of actually how you run it. Now, other people have kind of had a crack at it, but they have not published their toolchain, whereas Cloud Foundry Group published Bosh. And so you're as close as possible to how they're doing it, so that you never getting that far away from actually what everyone else is doing. Again, I mean, I'm not just saying that. I left my relatively well-paid job to start a consultancy because I just think this is a better way for me to enjoy my life and to to get to do something I think is important. So now, if you might have not followed that tremendously excellent work, set of like 6 commands, of which one was installing net SSH as a workaround, which I'd love to fix, because then we'd be down to 5 commands. That's got to be better than 6. So bit.ly cfbosh_workshop. Go to that. I'll tweet it. Basically ask questions. Where do you live? Where would you like to have a workshop? And we can figure it out from there. But I think it's fun. I would love to help you do it. If only so you can do it, you then help me work on my tools. That's what I want. Let's be honest. I want you to work on my stuff. Matt probably wants you to work on his stuff too. Both of them. There's 2 Matts. That's too many. But nonetheless, we really would love you to come along. So you and everyone else deserves nice things. And I honestly believe Cloud Foundry is one of those. So hopefully you'll come with me. Thanks. Wow, that was only 20 minutes. I we've got 3 hours for questions. I'm glad you did ask questions as we went along.
So you were running this on Amazon Web Services?
Correct.
Is there any way to do the initial setup locally, like with vCenter or with OpenStack? How would you do it differently?
So someone has started an end-to-end tutorial for DevStack.
Right.
So say you had a little macmini, and how do you get DevStack on it? That's the bare minimum OpenStack.
Yeah.
and it's truly crippled. Apparently, it's really small, but yeah, had to do it all from there as well. So yeah, I'm super interested. I want to follow that. I don't. I want someone to give me a workshop to get OpenStack running. 'Cause I'm scared to waste time on it. I don't have. But yeah, so there's a bunch of people. It's really exciting, actually, the number of people who get this working and then turn around and write documentation or help someone else. So it's I think it's, this project, the ones I built and the Cloud Foundry project in general, very exciting in terms of the people participating. So yes, if you can figure out how to run vSphere, you are a cleverer man than I am. Not to say it's hard, but I mean, apparently it's doable. I mean, people do it. I guess. But yeah. So the tool chain itself currently doesn't, the tools I wrote to orchestrate Bosch are not yet supporting vSphere, though we've got a man and we're going to work on it.
Okay.
Scared, I'll be honest.
Have you looked at Revelo?
Big one.
Have you looked at Revelo systems?
Revelo?
Yeah.
No, so let's look at it. Let's not look at my email. I lost the cursor. My pawn might show. Oh, anyway, what's it called? Oh, hang on, I can press a button. RAVE.
E-double-L-O systems.
I'm not going to type systems. Should have. All right. I've never heard of the word Revelo. All right.
Somebody has, they got 26 million.
Cool. I mean,
I'll show you.
that's cool. Without, it's awkward to look at this and attempt to figure out where it fits in the universe. So yeah.
I'll show
Congratulations on getting it on the thing. If it's yours, I don't know. No. Revelo knows how to overcome the internal resource constraints and use the public cloud.
Cloud application hypervisor?
Sounds.
enables you to say the blueprint of several VMs stitched together in a private network, and then you clone that, those 5 VMs together.
I cannot tell you that what Bosch does is unique. I'm just thoroughly impressed that it does it and it's fully open source.
Okay.
I mean, at some point it's shell scripting.
I can give you some perspective because I played with both systems. So Revelo is a nested hypervisor that runs on Amazon and that adds virtual networking. So you design your blueprints, you create your machines and your packages and all that, and then you can deploy these blueprints in Amazon as they are.
Yeah.
You can use VMware images on that. But they kind of target a very specific use case, which is dev and test. While Bosch targets a slightly different use case. Bosch is really about operating in a continuous way your production environment.
Okay.
So that's the way, and Bosch is heavy on automation and updating your distributed system as it goes, while Revelo is really about dev and test for your existing system. So I'd say this is how they differentiate.
That's really cool. I certainly have one of the things at where I work, because we run basically large vSphere, 100 and something VMs running lots of different Cloud Foundry deployments. And one of the things we're looking at is putting all the dev clouds out in Amazon. It's cheaper, we don't really care about whether they stay up or not. So this idea of hybrid is huge. I mean, yes, and if you had legacy systems and something could let you extend out in hybrid, other cloud, that's really cool. I mean, in this particular scenario, I guess we have a different one. I love this profession. The stuff that we're building is really cool.
Like I would love something kind of built on Vagrant cluster. So the
Vagrant?
developers could run it on local machines. Not so paying money for Amazon or...
So, just to answer, if you do want to just run Cloud Foundry and have a sticky beak of how it works, there is the micro Cloud Foundry, which does come on, you run it on, whether it can run on things other than VMware. This is just legacy of it, coming from VMware and promoting its own products. You can run it from VirtualBox, so that's another option. On Zen.
It's an OVF image, right? Yeah, anything OVF.
So that's an option. I mean, you're building making Bosch work with Vagrant, a CPI for Vagrant would, we were talking about this on Twitter with Mitchell, who runs Vagrant, because I've been watching what Mitchell Hashimoto, who's the guy that created and runs Vagrant, the pain and suffering he's been going through, making Vagrant work nicely with Fusion and Workstation, who are almost explicitly designed not to be automated. That's pretty much how I can put it. Yeah, he gets the feeling that someone actually explicitly put time and effort into making it hard to automate, whilst pretending to be easy. So anyway, so it's actually interesting, the idea of automating Vagrant via Bosch. If only then you could automate by nature then vSphere and VM Player and everything. But again, Vagrant's got a bunch of cool cloud features coming out. So all the technology is really interesting. The core asset, I keep saying to people, anyone that stands still long enough to listen, is the CF release, which is where how Cloud Foundry runs is worked on. So perhaps that thing could be brought into other spaces outside of Bosch, but
And also, combined with VB.
Sorry, say again?
VB.
VWE. Yeah, so there's even, there is a project called Stem Cell. Command line tool to create new Bosch stem cells, which runs on VWE. So this is really interesting, that people are looking at this stuff. So because the core idea of a Bosch stem cell, the very core essence of it, is that it runs a project called the Bosch agent. And that Bosch agent is attached to an ATS and listens for instructions.
So what's the difference between the micro Cloud Foundry and what you showed us tonight? This one is more scalable, able to do more instances of the DEA and the core VMs, or?
So the micro Cloud Foundry is built using the same tool chain.
Okay.
It is built from the CF release. It is exactly the same code that goes into it. And Matt, I think, put a blog post out a couple months ago saying that anytime a new release goes out to .com, a new micro Cloud Foundry download will be available. So from that perspective, it's exactly the same. And as you start to understand how this stuff works, you kind of start making up amusing sort of pranks to pull. I just don't have time to do them, so I'm going to say it, and we're just going to laugh. And but it runs a Bosch agent in it, or so you could theoretically trick it. You could tell it, hey, point to that blob store, and become something else, because it's just Bosch. So it's pre-baked in that it's got everything on it. But that's essentially when it boots up, it essentially goes through the Bosch cycle, a Bosch VM cycle of saying, so what do you want to become? And it sort of pretends to become something. So it's a very similar tool chain.
Okay. I think to answer the question,
sorry if I didn't answer.
It's one VM, and that's all it does. It doesn't extend.
Right, yeah, sorry. I did skip that part because it's kind of obvious to my mind that, the current micro Cloud Foundry, doesn't scale. But it does have all the same parts. So if you were to SSH, you'd see it laid out the same way. It is laid out the same way, var vcap. Yep.
So it's like a dev stack for Cloud Foundry, where dev stack is a single VM running everything. Yep, okay.
Okay, you started the Heroku part, so does your router queue? That's what
That's a router queue. James loves to answer this question.
Defer to Matthew, because Matthew is a lead engineer.
I didn't hear that.
You'd rather hear from an engineer than from the product manager.
Ah,
I know the answer, but
you never go. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. I would. I just don't get that option. So yeah.
The router has very similar problems to what Heroku has, if you call them problems, because what you're really looking at is this distributed state table of which application instances are in use at any given time, and that changes in a large active deployment of Cloud Foundry. That changes hundreds of times a millisecond. Well, hundreds of times a second. And so you can't really replicate that state of which ones are available across multiple routers. So if you implemented a router with one router being responsible for your application, you could really do a smart router. But because you actually want the reliability of having multiple routers, you can only really resort to heuristics. And so there aren't, we haven't gone down the path of sort of creating different heuristics for different stacks yet. But that's because it's open source, it's something if people are seeing behavior that doesn't match with their app, they're welcome to go in there and look at that and plug in different strategies.
And just to finish that, so say you built your own router. You say, well, how do I include it in this universe? You would create a Bosch release for which there are tools, and then that deployment manifest, you would sort of skip some of the tools that I talked about and just go straight to Bosch, and you just blend the releases together. And you'd have a VM come up with your router on it, and it would just behave as part of the system. So.
We have seen other people run router. You talked about an HA proxy one. There's one written in Node that's closed source that I know of. So like there are different people for different reasons have needed different things in the router layer and have replaced it with something that worked for them. So and we have the Go router and we have an Nginx-based router. So there are all sorts of different options you can choose to fit your needs.
Is there any value in integrating, so we have like production systems based on Puppet, that integrated for that environment so developers can self-provision their own systems?
So theoretically with this tool chain, I'd ultimately like to meet someone who couldn't deploy their own Cloud Foundry, because I'd like to fix it. I'd like to meet that person, find out what bizarre brain patterns they had, not bizarre, right, where they're coming from that this tool chain doesn't work for them. To answer the question differently, can you describe Cloud Foundry with Puppet? Yes. All you're doing is installing packages, which assume you've packaged it somehow. You're creating config files. Cloud Foundry loves config files. You've got it's creating more config files on how to start processes. So Bosch uses Monet as just an integrated uses Monet. You might use RRunit or something like that. And then you tell it to start. And that comes to life, however you wish to do that. Go for gold. There is someone curating. So Trotter wrote a set of chef recipes last year. Trotter got bored and stopped working on them. Someone else picked them up, and now he looks after them. Italian guy, Andrea Campi. And so there is a sort of a chef universe coming to life. I don't know yet of anyone doing a Puppet implementation of the same stuff. But you can always just go back to the CF release, where the Bosch, you get to see what the templates look like, and you could go from there. Yep.
I was curious, you probably are you familiar with the Juju? And
I'm aware of it. I've not played with it.
It's not a PaaS, but it's basically a service orchestration framework.
Yep.
The thing that's really neat about it is that with something like Juju, now assuming you're willing to live within limitation that you can only deploy to Ubuntu to a point of or above.
We use Ubuntu, so.
Okay, and most people do in the cloud. You can basically roll your own PaaS, and I've done it, several times. There's some functionality that you don't get, like you don't have a cloud controller, you don't have a health manager, but a router, HA proxy, boom, throw that up. You want Nginx, okay, you got Nginx. You want Nginx with Rails in the same node, boom. You want them in separate nodes, boom, no problem. And one of the things, when I was first exposed to Juju after digging into Cloud Foundry, I was really excited about Cloud Foundry. And then I looked at Juju and I said, damn, I wish Cloud Foundry was architected more like Juju, that it was loosely coupled. Because one of my frustrations, this was about a year ago, when I was digging into Cloud Foundry, is after a while, I said, now I realized, now I want to extend it. And I realized, God, there's so many parts I have to know about in order to just like plug in a different, router. Yeah. Whereas with Juju, because everything's so loosely coupled, I can just substitute one router with other router. So it'd be great in an ideal world if I could wish something, I would wish that basically the health manager and the cloud controller were decoupled in such a way that somebody could just basically just throw them up as services.
I mean, they're fairly decoupled, right?
Yeah.
As long as they communicate over NATs.
I mean, it's you might be
And as long as they communicate over NATs, they're pretty decoupled. I thought.
NATs being
the message
The
bus.
message bus. Like,
again, that's one of the problems. Is like, why do you have?
So why is Juju a better word than NATs? They've both got the same number of letters.
It's not a messaging firm. Juju is just simply a deploy. It is basically a style of architecture that's a mechanism for deploying.
but
and you is.
I tell you what, I can't argue that Juju is better or worse.
What's that?
I literally cannot have this conversation. I don't know. So you're awesome, Pat. I wondered what you did. You're awesome.
Because I gave a talk at the Canonical conference a year and a ago, and these guys, actually, the Canadian guys had built some Juju charms to deploy Cloud Foundry at that time. So Bosch was not open source yet at that time. One of the issues they had on the canonical side is that they do 6-month release where you need to backport all the bugs that happen in there. And when they were talking to the Cloud Foundry team, as Nic showed you, like we issue patches every day and there's new stuff coming up every day, and we just couldn't commit to say, well, we're going to backport all the bugs to your Ubuntu release from 6 months ago. And Bosch was really designed in order to have this kind of agile production deployment environment where our engineering team could like create new code every day and then release new versions of Cloud Foundry in production every like twice a week, for example.
And get the exact same experience.
And what the Ubuntu guys are doing is it's more they build a system that's stable for 6 months for their customer base to move that every 6 months. And I think that's why the Juju for Cloud Foundry story didn't unroll, because there's this really strong difference in the deployment models of the software. And I think it's still an issue to be solved.
It is true. It is true, but on the other hand, because the Juju architecture, if you use Juju, you naturally think in terms of services. Everything is a service. So your cloud controller is a service, your router is a service, and you can, if you decide you want to use HA proxy as your router, you use HA proxy. If you want to use some other router, or if you want to use Nginx as your reverse proxy, you can do that. Because the things are so loosely coupled, even though, as you say, the release cycle is very fixed, the development of charms and the combination of charms is extremely flexible. It's happening every day. People are developing new charms, people are combining the charms and basically throwing them whole new environments. Does that make sense? So
what's interesting is from my perspective as a systems owner, like I want to run Cloud Foundry, and this is perhaps one of my sort of slights on Chef. So the mental model of Chef is a VM comes up and it's sort of, you give it roles and it sort of becomes something, you hope it all works. The mental model that comes with Bosch is, here's exactly what I want this to become. Whatever it is now, please become this. Sort of an overarching description, which the benefit of that is in moving a system, perhaps through dev, test, staging, production, is you can reproduce an exact system. So this system works, now move this exact deployment description into production. And so this means that, theoretically, it means that you reduce errors, you reduce the chance of things being wrong and different and every nuance. So I mean, I definitely don't want to disagree with you on the benefit of getting charms and being able to compose interesting things. When it comes to complex systems, not that interested in necessarily just throwing stuff together. I want to know exactly what's going in there.
Okay.
Personally.
See, I'm confused. Maybe I'm not communicating well, but I see Bosch as being orthogonal. That what I'm talking about is the issue of Cloud Foundry and like.
Now, on that I will agree. Like the massive CF release, sort of describing everything, doesn't give you really a feel that this thing is decoupled.
Yeah.
It feels like exactly described, which from a go live perspective is great. From a feeling like, can I change this? What's my relationship to this?
Bingo. That's where
and I've sort of been waiting to talk about these tools to sort of move on to the next part of, right, now that a few people other than just me are fucking around with this thing, now how do we compose this thing? How do you bring your own stuff in? So yeah, definitely interested in making that fun and easy and friendly, because that's how we're all going to do this.
Here he was saying that the cloud controller and health manager can be decoupled as long as they communicate with NAS.
Correct.
And that's sort of the
That's
issue.
correct, right? But the deployment model may or not.
If that wasn't a requirement, if you could just pick your own messaging service and say, hey, I want a cloud controller and I want a health manager and I want to use RabbitMQ. End of story. The lead engineers at VMware may think that's a poor implementation choice, but if you have the option, it would essentially allow for a lot more flexibility and allow a lot more people to essentially play with different implementation options.
So I noticed people are getting a bit restless, so should we continue this in a smaller group afterwards? And
I feel bad for who wanted to do a stand-up lightning talk thing with the the talking and the screen and everything. I don't feel so bad anymore. All right. Thank you very, very much.